Hello, this is Winston of Happier Abroad. Today I'm going to be talking about some dominant characteristics of Asian people, in particular Taiwanese, Chinese, and Japanese, to help you understand them a little better and to give you some insight into um, how they think and what how they reason and just how they are. But none of this is going to be politically correct at all. So if you're big on political correctness, you might be offended by this, and so you might want to skip this video. But this is not meant to be pro or anti-Asian. It's just the truth, the way I see it. I mean, these are just the defining patterns that I see, and the defining dominant characteristics of Asian people that I see. It's not anything pro or con. It's just the way I see it. Okay, so let's begin. The first thing to understand is that, like America and the American mentality, the Taiwanese, Japanese, and Chinese are very, very workaholic, in that they believe that the purpose of life is to work. They live to work, and without it, they feel no purpose or meaning in their lives. They feel basically empty. And so a lot of people in Taiwan work like 6 days a week or even 7 days a week, simply because they have no idea what to do with a day off. And that's really sad. It's like they have no other interests outside of work. And I've seen this literally from a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people I know in Taiwan do work 7 days a week, or at least six, and have no other interest in life. And so they're just not very interesting people to get to know or to learn from. I mean, they're just robots that are locked into this routine and can never get out of it because they have no ability to want anything else. I mean, they just have no passion or any other desires other than just follow a simple routine. And a lot of people, some people have jobs, and some people just have a family business underneath their house, like a shop that they open, and so they're just working there 7 days a week with no other interest. And many don't even travel within their own country, let alone overseas. And if you're in America, you can sort of see this too. Like, for example, on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve or New Year's Day, you'll notice that a lot of restaurants are closed, but the Chinese ones are open. And that's because a lot of the Chinese people don't believe in taking any days off, even on Christmas Day, because I mean they just feel guilty for taking a day off. They have nothing else to do, and they kind of feel like they're missing out on something if they're not working. So they're just totally conditioned to be a slave to the machine, to be productive, and they derive fulfillment only from working. And to me, that makes them very one-dimensional. That they don't have any other interests and no independent thought, and no ability to make their own purpose out of life, or to explore, or to seek a different lifestyle, or to even to have any wonder or curiosity about the rest of the world. I mean, a person doesn't have to live that way. And even with Taiwanese people or Chinese people who are rich and wealthy and don't need to work anymore, a lot of them still do. So it's not a necessity. I mean, they don't have to, because and you know this, because even when they're really rich and don't have to work, they still do, because their life is essentially empty without working. And that's why and that's one main observation. Another is that, if you'll notice, not a lot of people in Asia are confident. And that's because the culture does not value confidence. It's not seen as a good thing. Instead, especially in Chinese and Japanese culture, they like people who are compliant and obedient and dutiful in doing their duties um, because people like that are easier to control. But when you have someone who has confidence, those people are harder to control, and harder to keep in line. So confidence is not valued, and it's not seen as a good thing in most of Asia. And that's why when you see Taiwanese children or even adults, you see that they have very little confidence. Instead, they're very shy and meek and just very humble and just kind of passive, very passive, because they're taught that being assertive and direct and confident is not really a good thing. It's also the elite in their society have an easier time controlling them because they don't value confidence and they don't strive for it. Instead, what they strive for is conformity. In pretty much in all of Asia, people love to conform. They love to follow the pack. There's no value at all on being unique or different or standing above the crowd. What they like are people. I mean, everyone has this mentality that a total followers mentality. They follow, they conform, they don't think for themselves. They follow the pack, and they don't even see a choice between conformity or non-conformity. In their world, everyone wants to conform, and so they don't even see not conforming as a possibility. It's that one-dimensional. It's that sort of a tunnel vision. And so that's another very strong characteristic that you'll see among Asian people, is that they live to conform. They don't think for themselves, they're essentially followers, not leaders, and definitely not free thinkers. They follow whatever their media, their school, their parents, their culture teaches them, and that's that. They don't even conceive of an option of not doing that. Another main characteristic of Taiwanese and Chinese people are that their mentality is very, very limited to the practical. In other words, they're very left-brained. And you might notice this if you're in America and you grew up around a lot of Asian students, like in California, for example, or New York, or I mean, especially like in San Francisco or LA. If you grew up in those areas around a lot of Asian students, what you'll notice is that they're really good at math. Most of them are, and they'll breeze through with straight A's, like it's a cakewalk to them. Then when it comes to English or something creative, then all of a sudden they're not so strong, and they're kind of weak in those areas. And that's because they're very left-brained and they're not good with things like creativity or concepts or ideas. For example, a typical Asian person, who's a follower, would not be able to look at a concept like communism or capitalism or Christianity or Buddhism, or even a book full of ideas. They wouldn't be able to take a look at that and say, well, these are the parts I agree with, and for these reasons, number one, number two, number three, and this is why I don't agree with it. Reason one, reason two, reason number three. I mean, it takes a free thinker who sees things broadly to make those kind of arguments, or to evaluate and analyze ideas and concepts and theories, or just anything abstract. I mean, it takes a person who's attuned to their right brain to do that. But the vast majority of Asians cannot do that because they're completely focused on the left brain, the practical stuff, the numbers. And in fact, like I said, creativity is not even valued in Chinese culture. It's considered useless. I mean, they're very pragmatic and materialistic. I mean, it's nothing like the mystical Shaolin mystics that you see in martial arts movies. I mean, very, very few Asian people are like that. The majority of them are very materialistic, very left-brained, and their understanding is only limited to the practical. And that's why even when you meet an Asian American or an Asian that's really educated, what you'll find is that they're educated and intelligent only in practical things. If you start talking about ideas and abstract concepts like religion, philosophy, quantum physics, history, Shakespeare, all these writers that have higher levels of thinking, or just spiritual topics in general, or metaphysical topics, or just very existential topics. You won't be able to talk to them about those kind of things because they're just not attuned in those areas. For those kind of things, you're better off talking to people who are artists, such as artists in America or Europe, or people involved in counterculture movements. Those are the kind of people who think outside the box, that can talk about existential subjects, or alternative topics. And especially in Europe, you'll find that a lot of people have a very broad mind. They have a very broad cultural understanding of different topics, not just practical topics, but intellectual, existential topics as well. But with most Asians, who are followers and pragmaticists and very left-brain practical types, who don't think for themselves, you'll find that you're only going to be limited to talking about very practical things, very surface level things that involve money or work or technology or real estate or finance or cooking or very, very simple materialistic type of topics. So yeah, that's another dominant main characteristic of Asian people that I've noticed. Okay, well, that's it for now, and hope you found that revealing and insightful. I know there's a lot of people that are probably going to be angry and say, oh, I know an Asian person that's not like that, or this and that, but I mean, sure, there's always exceptions, but I mean, from what I see, the vast majority are what I describe. I mean, they do have those main characteristics, and unless you have a grudge against these characteristics, or you're full of political correctness. I mean, these things are obvious to any honest observer. Okay, well, thanks for watching. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Now, one more thing. I'd like to show you some examples of what I'm talking about. Here are some quotes that stress the wisdom of nonconformity. As you can see, those quotes stress the wisdom of not conforming to an insane, sick society or majority. And only a free thinker would be able to appreciate such quotations, because someone who's a conformist by nature, who only sees conformity as the only thing that exists in the universe, would not be able to appreciate or understand the wisdom in such quotes, because it would be totally outside of their box, out of their paradigm. So if you want to test what I'm talking about, show those quotes to a typical Asian conformist and see their response. They probably won't have much to say about it. And so that's an example of what I'm talking about in those quotes. And to give you another example, I want to show you a clip from one of my favorite martial arts movies called Return of the Dragon with Bruce Lee. In this clip, Nora Miao takes him through the sights of Italy, and as they're looking at some cultural and historical sites, Nora Miao asks Bruce Lee, "What do you think of all this?" And see his response.
Look, these monuments are all ancient Roman relics. This is... What's wrong?
Our slums are just like this.
Come on. This garden was built by an ancient king for his queen. The time and money it took to build all this, I think he must have really loved her. Are you married? How do you like this place?
It's a big waste, all of this. In Hong Kong, I would build on it, make money.
We'd better go back.
As you can see, what Bruce Lee said is very reflective of a typical Chinese mentality, which believes that only practical things like money matter. Things like art, history, and culture are kind of useless and irrelevant to their world. And that's a reflection of that mentality. Now, I'm not saying that all Chinese people think like that or would not appreciate art and history. I'm not saying that at all, but that clip is a reflection of just the basic cultural attitude of the Chinese. And it's unusual that Bruce Lee would put a clip like that into one of his movies, because supposedly he was a philosopher who developed his own style of martial arts. And so in that sense, supposedly he was a free thinker. So it's kind of unusual and odd that he would have a clip like that in his film. So anyways, those are some examples of what I'm talking about. And I hope it all makes sense to you, and I hope none of it was offensive to you. So I thank you for watching, and see you next time.